Welcome to this week's installment of Developer Skill Sprints. Today we will cover the topic of understanding user behavior with App Analytics. My name is Brian Alexakis, and I am a Product Marketing Manager here at Embarcadero Technologies. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter at IoTBrian. Blog notes for today's skill sprint are available online at embt.co/sprint-app-analytics. App Analytics is a new software as a service offering from Embarcadero Technologies that is compatible with RAD Studio XE8, Delphi XE8, C++ Builder XE8, and the App Method Spring release. It will work on both VCL Windows and FireMonkey mobile and desktop apps for all platforms, including Windows, OS X, iOS, and Android. In today's skill sprint, we will begin by defining software analytics and then discuss why software analytics matters. Then we will dive into the specifics of the Embarcadero AppAnalytics service. Lastly, I will dive into some examples of how to implement App Analytics with your app. Software analytics are typically presented as a software as a service to developers. At the end of the day, the goal of software analytics is to deliver the best user interface and user experience to your end user. This is achieved by informing the efforts of developers so they can turn around and use that information to optimize the evolution of your application's UI and UX. How exactly does that happen? Well, first, data must be gathered about how the end user is using your application. What form controls are being clicked, how the user navigates around in the app, what kind of exceptions are thrown, what kind of operating systems are being used, how the application terminates, are just a few examples. We will get into the specifics of what kind of data is gathered for Embarcadero's App Analytics later in this presentation. That data then is visualized via a dashboard, which displays metrics to the developer. These metrics are displayed in charts, graphs, and other visual formats. By analyzing this information, developers are able to make informed decisions on the development of the UI and UX. Traditionally, approaches to gain insight to how end users interact with your app are restricted to things like using surveys or directly watching an end user's interactions. Surveys are limited in their completeness and accuracy, as a survey cannot capture the same volume of information as analytics can. Directly observing a user interact with your app is very useful, but will ultimately be restricted in terms of sample size of data, because it's really not reasonable to look over the shoulder of every end user. However, with analytics, you truly can look over the shoulder of every end user and gain specific and complete insights as to how your end user is actually interacting with your app. Analytics have been widely adopted in all kinds of software applications, ranging from games, web, cloud services, and currently is emerging for mobile and desktop apps. Understanding how your end users are interacting with your app is critical to the longevity of your app. If the user interface is hard to use, then your app will suffer from user abandonment. Today's end users do not have any patience for hard to use or clunky user interfaces. So to best avoid app abandonment, you need to take active steps to ensure that your UI is as smooth as it can be. This can only happen by actively monitoring your end user behavior within your app and then actively changing your UI based on that feedback. So your application development process needs to be highly iterative based on constantly evaluating how your end users are directly using your app. This process creates a sort of feedback loop that begins with your UI, then capturing your user interaction, sending those interactions to the App Analytics service, and then monitoring the results in the App Analytics dashboard, which then finally informs the developer on how to change the UI UX based on this feedback. When you begin, you first want to initially deploy your UI UX at the prototype phase. And presumably it won't be perfect, and there really is no way to know how a human being will actually end up interacting with your UI ahead of time. So when it comes to analyze the dashboard, the first thing that you should analyze is anything that might be causing painful UI experiences. So for example, if a large amount of exceptions are being thrown consistently across your user board, across your user base, then this would be a great way to determine that this problem, needs to be fixed. So for example, you'll be able to answer questions like, are these crashes occurring only on Windows or only on Android? So this will help you identify and fix exception errors as they occur in the wild. When it comes to a smooth UI, you want to analyze what kinds of actions may be buried under a long chain of UI actions. And if you can reduce the number of steps that a end user has to take to get to a commonly used button, for example, then by analyzing those steps, you can eliminate those extra steps and move the button into an area in the UI that's more accessible from the beginning. So this is really an ongoing effort that, again, should start at the prototype phase through development, constantly getting user feedback, constantly improving your UI with respect to that feedback, and even branching out beyond to the maintenance phase of your application development. Embarcadero AppAnalytics allows you to gather usage information from your end users, such as how often your application is used and its uptime, the number of active users for your application, which platforms your users are using, how often your application crashes, how users navigate the forms and controls in your application, and you can also define custom events. Embarcadero AppAnalytics works with RAD Studio XE8, Delphi XE8, C++ Builder XE8, App Method Spring Release. It works with VCL, FMX, C++, or Delphi projects, and can be deployed to Windows, OS X, iOS, and Android apps. AppAnalytics has an option to display a modal pop-up window that contains a privacy message. You can either use the default message or define your own custom message. When this option is used, AppAnalytics will not begin capturing usage information until the end user accepts the pop-up window. Usage data is collected anonymously. However, developers must take care when using the custom event feature of AppAnalytics. Ensure that your custom event does not send or store any private or sensitive data, and follow up with your local regulations with regard to privacy. Getting started with Embarcadero AppAnalytics is simple. You can start with a free account using your existing EDN to log in. Just go to appanalytics.embarcadero.com and you can get started with your free trial that will be good for up to 10,000 events over a given 30-day period. I will be showing an Object Pascal FireMonkey app with AppAnalytics. This is a project that is part of the bundled sample projects, and I'm going to show you in just a moment where to find those sample projects. They are available in both CPP and Object Pascal. And this demo is extending that sample project to demonstrate custom events. And if you'd like to download this custom demo that I'm showing you here, you can go to the blog and download it there. If you want to start exploring AppAnalytics demo code, just navigate to your Documents folder, Embarcadero Studio 16, samples, and then determine if you want to do CPP or Object Pascal. And then mobile samples, devices, sensors and services, and app analytics. Here you will find a demo that will show you how to get started with app analytics. I've built a small demo on top of this project, so let's go ahead and examine it. Adding app analytics to your application is straightforward. Open up the tool palette and search for TApp Analytics under Services. It's already been added to this application. If you select the component here, first thing you need to do is fill out the application ID. The application ID is generated by the App Analytics dashboard here. Once you're logged in, click on Applications and Add New, and type in a unique name, App Analytics Demo. And then you take the application ID that gets generated here and simply paste it into the application ID property value for your App Analytics component. Now that we have the application ID entered, we can begin to look at some other property values. Cache size will represent the number of events logged before it communicates to the App Analytics engine. In this case, it's set to 10, so any more than 10 events will trigger uploading your, usage information to App Analytics. The second thing to look at is update interval. This is measured in milliseconds, and this will define the amount of time that will pass between communications to the server. Next, we can take a look at the options here. These are some properties that we can set that will determine what kinds of events will be tracked. So we have app start, app exit, control focus, window activated, an exception, and a custom. Okay, before we dive into the details of how this application works, let's go ahead and take a look at the App Analytics dashboard for this application. So here we can see some sample data that was recorded from April. The blue line indicates application starts, and the red line indicates users. And you can go in here and get specific information about these data points. Software versions refers to your deployed software version. So if we come back into the application and we open up options, we're going to want to look at project options and version info. So the values that you define here will show up here under software versions. Next, we have operating systems. This defines the type of OS that is loading your app. So here we can see some iOS apps, and here we can see Windows being used. Next, let's take a look at flow. So flow indicates how users move between forms. This particular application starts with a splash screen, and as I highlight the outer ring, it will show the connected forms. In this case, you can see by this arch here that the splash form connects to the main form at both points of exit. Okay, so let's take a look at that really quick. Okay, so we begin by analyzing the splash form, which is Unit 3. And the splash form basically contains a label with a timer. That timer fires and loads the next form. Okay, so if we run this application, you can see the splash screen, and then after the splash screen, the main form gets loaded. So that action is, what this connection here represents, a transition from the splash form to the main form. Now there's a third form here as well that gets accessed from the main form, and if I look here, I can see that it's this BR parts form, which correlates to this window here. So each time that I click this button, it fires up yet a new form, and that event is captured by this arch right here. We're transitioning from the main form to the parts form. Now, if I close the parts form which sort of correlates to this arc traveling up. When I close it, you can see that it goes back to the main form. So when I close that, I return to the main form. So this is kind of how you interpret this graph to see the sort of the story, if you will, or the path that your end user took navigating through your user interface. Let's take a look at some custom events. Here we can see customer time zone. These are previous custom events that I used in the past. And if you click on one, it opens it up. And we've attached custom metadata, specifically the time zone location of the user and the locale. So if we want to look at the code, let's go ahead and close this, back down, load up our main form. And the custom event gets triggered when the custom event button is clicked. And basically the logic here is saying, hey, are we actively tracking the application? Or rather, are we actively tracking the user as they navigate the application? In other words, is AppAnalytics activated? In the context of this application, that really refers to whether they have accepted the pop-up menu that I showed earlier. If it is enabled, then here we have the tCustom event context being created, and we put our custom string as a label, and then we pass in the metadata. So we're grabbing the time zone, and then we just send it off to the Analytics Manager, and that will create the custom event. So here we can see, if I kind of show a side-by-side view, customer time zone, and here the label is the metadata. So here we have previous custom events that are not currently expressed in the code. So if I were to change this label, it would then just simply create new entries here. So this, you can really use any kind of metadata that you might want to capture to create custom events. Next week we will be covering how to be more productive with IDE coding tricks you need to know about. If you'd like to catch the full schedule of upcoming skill sprints, please visit embt.co/sprints15. Note that the S is capitalized and is case sensitive. These skill sprints occur every Tuesday. I hope you have found this session informative. Please find me on Twitter, and if you would like to download the demo that I showed today, please visit the blog post at embt.co/sprint-app-analytics. And of course, you can download a free trial of RAD Studio XE8 at embt.co/trial downloads and get started testing out AppAnalytics with your application today. I will now turn it over to question and answer. Phyllis has a question here. Is there a way for the user to opt out of analytics data gathering once they have approved it? Yeah, actually, the demo that you can download from the blog actually demonstrates the retaining of the user's approval. So that gets stored in a local file, and basically you can set up a button to clear that acceptance out. If you don't save that state, then it will just pop up every time and ask the user to approve it. So that's sort of something you can check out in the demo. Ray asks, can you clear the app cache after a bug fix?
Not sure what he means about the app cache. If he's talking about clearing the analytics in the storage area, that's one thing. That's the reporting database part versus the cache of analytics that are kept in the application until they're sent up to the database. So if he's saying if he wants to clear the reports, they're kept in the database, but you can bump your version number. And then when you look at the analytics, you can filter by and see what the reports are for different version numbers. If you go into your project options version number and you bump the version number for your build, then you can filter your analytics by version number. If that came across clear or not.
Yeah, I think I demonstrated that where to find that as well in the demo. Let's see here. Okay, great. Thanks, Ray. We have a question here from Frank regarding a virus scanner. Found this kind of call is not so good. Programs compiled with this triggers virus scanners heuristic. So that's interesting feedback. Definitely have to take a look at that.
I've been running samples and I haven't had a virus scanner alert on any of the demos or any of the applications I've built, and I run virus scan software. So Frank, if you have an example of an alert, send it to us.
Hi, Frank. I just posted my email address to you. If you want to go ahead and send me some details, I'd love to actually look into that. We have a question from Bjarne. With XE8, he has a license for one app. Can I use that for a while and then switch to another app? David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that basically you're limited to one app at a time, but you can switch between which app is being used. I'm not 100% sure, actually.
Create one app. That's what you can do. You can create one app.
Yeah, so then what you can do is you can download your data that gets harvested in a CSV file, and then you can delete your one app and just create a new one.
Right.
So in that way, you can effectively move between different applications, but you can really only ever record data from one app at a time.
Correct. That's for the free level.
Right. Phyllis is asking if we have a price for the service. We certainly do. We're going to be adding that to our website soon, but in the meantime, you can just contact the sales department. And let's see if I have that.
Well, there is the pricing. Oh shoot, where do I find it now? It's on the AppAnalytics page at the bottom.
Let's see. It may have been removed. I can't remember.
No, it should be here. Let me go to the browser on my analytics.embarcadero.com. Oh, not that. Sorry.
Maybe it's back. Let's see. I just brought it up. Yeah. So here's the content. We are going to add it back soon. The reason why we don't have it up at the moment is because we're going to be adding conversion tables so that we have the pricing available for all different kinds of currency. So if you go to my blog, let's see, I will add a link to these sales, but if you just go to embarcadero.com/company/contact-sales, and I will put that into the questions here. Where did my questions go? Here they go. Okay. All right. So next question from Frank. Nearly all Delphi apps with Indy have this problem too. I'm assuming that's referring to your virus heuristics being set off.
Again, I've used lots of Indy examples. I've used all of these, and I haven't seen anything or any alerts. So if you have samples, send them along. Okay, and he said he's going to send an email. So
yeah, thanks, Frank. Okay, well, I will leave the questions open for a few more moments. And again, I will remind you that I apologize for not including the segment of the demo that covered the custom events. But as I said, there is a blog post covering that exact topic, and I link against that blog post in my blog post.
Yeah, there's two parts. On VCL, you just call track event, and the track event method takes takes 4 optional parameters. One of them is probably not optional, the first one. And there's a string, which is a categorization, a second string, which is a subcategorization, and a third string that you can put some information. And the fourth string is a value, a double. On FireMonkey, it's a little bit different because it has to hook into the FireMonkey event system. And Serena has a blog post that shows you the FireMonkey sample. You can also go to the doc wiki on AppAnalytics. And Brian, I don't know if you have those links. There's a page for AppAnalytics overview, and then there are 2 links in the doc wiki for using AppAnalytics with VCL apps, and the other one is using AppAnalytics with FireMonkey apps.
Yes, indeed. I do link against those blog articles and doc wiki entries. Sandro has a quick question about the overhead and bandwidth requirements of AppAnalytics. I imagine it isn't much, but David, maybe you have some insight to that.
It's an HTTP call of sending a very small packet of information. Unless you're doing a custom analytic and you're sending some, well, even that's not a large amount of information. It's 4 strings and a double, for example. So it's an HTTP call under the covers, and that's not much. The other thing I think to say is that you can control the overhead in a sense, number one, by caching. Number two, you don't have to always have the app active. You could, for example, trigger an app call because of some either user set or some logic that you're in your application. By default, if you turn it on and it starts right from the beginning of your application start, right? That's one of the events you could do. So you can also choose which events you want to track. And so, but the overhead is an HTTP call. That's not very much. Just a reminder, everyone, you can create an AppAnalytics account just using your EDN login, your community login, use your email address and password, and that gives you access to the server side, and you can start collecting data and view it and save it as a CSV file at the free level, which is up to 10,000 events per month for a single application. So you can get started quickly and easily with something you already know, your EDN account.
We have a first question from Davis. He'd like to know, is there one app restriction for free, meaning one app at a time, or one app in total? So yeah, it basically means that you can only have one app ID at a time. So you would have to delete one to obtain a new ID. But as David mentioned, you can download the CSV, which will contain all of your recorded data before you delete it. And of course, the pricing structure as you move up through the levels will give you access to more applications.
And also, you can have the same app using the same app ID, and then as you modify that application, just change the version number in project options, version info, and you'll see in the dashboard for that single application, if you have different versions of that application, that'll show up on the dashboard page that Brian pointed to that gives you the version number of the app, and you can drill down into that for, I guess, major and minor version number, and also see the platform that the application's running on.
RJ has a question about whether or not the user needs to approve collecting statistics.
In FireMonkey, that is required, and in VCL, you can also put that privacy string statement up. There's a method on VCL for bringing that up. I think it's privacy message, I think is the method called, but it will pop up and then the user can say yes or no. in the case of FireMonkey, and then it remembers that setting. But if you want to have it show up every time the user, then there's a method you can call. So um, it's really up to you if you want to tell your customers or not. Um, and on the mobile devices, it's built into FireMonkey, so it's a requirement.
Yeah, and the demo code that I showed today, if you download it, it will actually store that response from the user. So once they accept it, until that permission is revoked, it won't ask a second time. Let's see. So we have a question from James. What, if any, are the other limitations on the free account? It's just, it will, let's see, I believe it's a 30-day per month type of a deal. So it will record 10,000 events per month for just one app. And that really is the basic restriction. I don't think there's really anything else
So
that, in terms of functionality that you're restricted in.
your app will record all the events that you tell it to record. The dashboard will only show you the first 10,000 events in any given month.
Yeah, that's correct. So even if you go past your limit, those events will actually still be recorded and will be available to you if you move up the pricing structure.
And then when you get close to running out, you'll get since you logged in with your EDN account, you'll get an email that lets you know that you're getting close in a given in a given month to the limit. So then you can make the decision to contact sales or our reselling partners and up your level to a higher level, to a paid level. But your app can generate, 20,000 events. You'll just only see and be able to export the first 10,000. So but you have access to all of the events that are logged in the sense of it's not limited to only application starts. You can have custom events and so on. So it's really up to you as a developer to decide in your applications for your users, how often do you track analytics, and you can turn the app analytic component active and you can deactivate it. And you can also decide which events to track. You might decide to only track unhandled exceptions. You might decide to only track custom events of some kind. And it may also depend on the development cycle you're in. If you're doing testing of an app with your users, you may want to have more events turned on during the test time, but maybe only a certain type of event or category of events in production time. So really, it's your choice, given the different levels. And sometimes people ask us for what kind of, if I look at all the different levels, the number of events, how many, what level should I choose? And it's really up to you it's pretty simple calculation, I think. You probably know how many users, if you're deploying it in a certain constrained way, where the users buy the product from you, for example, or maybe they're users inside your company or inside of one of your customers. Maybe it's a small business that's got 10 users. So you could do the math, number of users times how many times in a day they may start the app, if you're tracking application starts, and do that math calculation, or how many events you're tracking for that number of users. Again, you can do the calculation to do a sizing estimate on your own of how many events and what level you may need to be at to get the information that you need. So it's just look at the options that are available for VCL and FireMonkey for tracking events, and then think about how many users that you have or that you potentially will have. And that's a good way to do a spreadsheet or calculator analysis of the level that you want to come in at. You can always upsize your level by contacting the sales and reselling partners. So, if you want to stay at the free 10,000 level for one application, maybe you just want to track custom events or something like that for a while, or application starts, whatever it might be.
Great. We have a follow-up question from Neil about the pricing structure. So once you want a second application, is the charge structure equal to the monthly fee plus usage, or is it merely usage only? So When you get a subscription, it's in a year block, and I think those events that you purchase are per month, and so it depends on what level you go into. Some levels have multiple applications that you can run concurrently.
Yes, you could buy into and then upgrade uh, as you uh, as you get close to a level. If you're monitoring the analytics, you can say, "Oh, looks like I'm getting more users than I thought," and you can also, again, you can turn on and off the analytics, and you can turn on and off the types of events. Even though I think Brian showed checking boxes at design time, those are just properties that you can set in code at inside of the application. So you might have your app uh, only collect data if it's some kind of in itself a data collection application that runs late at night. Then you could just have it track events during a certain time using a timer event or some other mechanism. So
Yeah,
really,
and so, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, it really it's up to you how you want to capture and then what level you want to join. The lowest level, the free level, is one app uh, reporting of up to, meaning you can see the data associated with the first 10,000 events in any given month, and that's forever and ever of time. Then the level
Right.
up from there, I think the second level is something like $39 a month, and it lets you have one app, but much more than 10,000 events and so on. So the best thing is, I think, Brian, they can contact our sales office. We have the pricing available. We're updating the website so that the pricing that was originally shown just in US dollars will show the right pricing for your currency depending on where you are in the world for most locales.
Yeah, great. So I think you just answered Larry's follow-up question, which is, does the 10,000 event and one app last for only 1 month, or is that for each month for the free trial?
So it's not really a free trial, it's a free level, and it's 10,000. You can see on the dashboard the first 10,000 events per month. So that's month by month by month. There's no time limited free trial in the sense of 30 days or whatever. So don't confuse that with our trial products. There's a free level of one application, up to 10,000 events that you can see the results of per month. And that goes on month by month by month by month by month from now until whenever. You may be asked to renew the free level. I'm not sure after a year, but uh, what happens is that the free one app 10,000 events is that when the new month comes, when we move over to the next month, you'll your dashboard will show that there's no events yet for that next month, whatever that is. So what you'll want to do is probably, if you want to say at this free level, is do something to save to the CSV file the events log for the first 10,000 events for a given month before the next month happens. But there's also a time range you can choose. But that count of what the dashboard sees rolls, goes to the new month and is set to 0 again. But the events are still there if you move to a paid level and so on. They're there. The only time, if I remember correctly, that events get deleted is if you delete an application from AppAnalytics in the dashboard, and then I think there's a reminder or warning that this is gonna delete the data from the underlying database.
We've got a question from Neil, and we kind of already addressed some of these, but I think we can add some additional information. Can you remotely turn off tracking, or can you deactivate it at the server? And then also, can you remain at the free basis while having more than one app out there with tracking enabled? So if you were to go to the dashboard and try to generate an app ID, and you've already created one, I think it will stop you from generating that second app ID. So you'd have to delete your existing one before you can get a new one. But if you take that same app ID and put it into multiple apps, I think that basically you'll just get one metric across both apps, which really won't. I'm kind of curious. What do you think? What's your take on that, David?
Sorry, I was on mute. If you
Oh,
have um, if you have different versions of an app, when you select the app in the dashboard, one of the things you'll see if you choose app starts or whatever versions, you'll see the different versions of your app showing up at the bottom. But the app statistics are all stored or are reported for that application, right? If you want to do other kinds of filtering, you can always export to CSV and then sort on the different columns or put them in your own database. As far as deactivating an app remotely, if I could ever figure out what my keyboard state here is versus for lowercase and uppercase here. Um, if you, let's see, if you delete an app, then you can create a new app. If you reuse the same UUID for an app in different applications, you'll have to figure out some mechanism for disambiguating
right.
the data. And I suppose you could do a custom event that would dump out something. As far as deactivating the analytics remotely, I suppose you could either tell your users to go to some settings menu and do something, or you could, I guess, put something in your applications that would go to some place, like on your own server, to check the state of what you want to do for app analytic tracking, and then set the property of TApp Analytics. But we don't have any sort of notification mechanism on our server side that would, when it saw an application start, that would send something back and tell the app don't track analytics. You'd have to do that through some either programming logics or some update of the app to your users, or telling your users to turn on and off, or some code that would go out to your server or somewhere to get that flag true or false that app analytics are active. Very hard.
Well, there was actually one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't bring up in the skill sprint is that when you submit data to the App Analytics engine, it takes about 15 minutes for it to show up on the dashboard. So if you go ahead and try it out and you don't see any results, you need to wait that 15 minutes.
Yeah, it actually will. The data is always being logged as you're caching it and sending it to the server. And then what happens is it your dashboard is updated every 15 minutes starting at the top of the hour. So it's on the top of the hour, 15 minutes after the hour, 30 minutes after the hour, 45 minutes after the hour. Your dashboard will be updated. So just be aware that if you're doing some testing or whatever, and it's like 2 minutes after the hour, your dashboard's not going to be updated in 15 minutes after the hour. The other thing is, I think you talked about it. I don't think you clicked on it, but there's a save to CSV file. So if you want to see what is exportable from the analytics that are being captured through your application, just choose an application, and then as you're in the dashboard, I think it's down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a link saying like save to CSV, something like that.
Yes.
You can load that spreadsheet or write a program that, where you actually, FireDAC has this batch move component that if you just give it a CSV file, it will read the data and figure out what the separators are and so on. So you can bring that into a TFDMEM table and play with it, or write some code to write it out to the database and then do your own analysis of the data. So one thing is to take a look. It's free to start. Just log in with your EDN account, your email address and password, not your user ID or username, and then create an application. Start putting some stuff in it. If you want to see what you can get out of the database, save it to CSV file and look at the columns and the data that's there. It's anonymous. There's no location data. There's no anything other than the warning Brian mentioned is if you're doing custom analytics, don't say things like social security numbers, credit card numbers, and other kinds of things. Right? but we don't. It doesn't capture everything, the metadata that you create or the app start uh, date and time, things of that kind. And I know, Brian, the web team is working on getting the pricing updated so that it will reflect whatever region of the world you're in some of the common currencies. Uh,
Right.
Free is the first level. You can get one app and up to 10,000 events that your dashboard will show you per month. Your app can generate more than 10,000, but you'll only see 10,000 at the beginning of each month. There is another level, which is $39.95, which gives you one app and 100,000 events per month. And then it goes from there. There's a $99 per month, multiple applications, and 300,000 events. So you can contact our sales office and our reseller to look at what's the level that you want, and you'll get reminded in an email as you're approaching whatever level you're at, whether it's the free level or moving up the different levels, and you can upgrade. You can contact sales and say you want to upgrade to the next level of monthly analytics level, and so on. So best thing is to contact sales if you're interested, or our reselling partners around the world, depending on where you are in the world, and they'll go over the pricing options that you have. But again, the best way is to, if you don't have XE8, download the trial. TApp Analytics components are in there for VCL and FireMonkey. Go to appanalytics.embarcadero.com and log in with your EDN account, your email address and password. You've got the free level for one app, and play with it and see what you can create in analytics. And as far as calculating levels, take a look at how many users, how many applications, how much activity, how many events that you're choosing to track or not track. You might only want to track unhandled exceptions or crashes. So you can tune what kind of analytics you're saving and how many of them you're saving, and then figure out the right level that's good for you.